Can scarcity truly breed superiority? How did a fighter partially built from plywood outmaneuver the Luftwaffe's best? In the skies over the Eastern Front, one Soviet fighter defied every expectation. No armor, no heavy guns, just raw agility and a blueprint born from desperation. Welcome to Historical Digs, where today we unearth the story of the Yakovlev Yak-3, a fighter that left the Luftwaffe dodging shadows. The philosophy of scarcity. By 1942, the Soviet Union's war machine teetered on collapse. German forces had overrun key bauxite regions, cutting off much of the USSR's aluminum supply. The Red Air Force needed fighters fast, but Stalin's mind was made up. Soviet leadership demanded factories prioritize available materials over ideal ones. Enter Alexander Yakovlev, an aviation engineer with a knack for resourceful design, who once worked with wooden prototypes. His team worked in unheated hangars, scribbling blueprints by candlelight. Their mandate bordered on madness. Craft a fighter lighter and nimbler than anything the Luftwaffe had ever seen, using plywood as a core material. This wasn't just recycling, it was reinvention. The Yak-3 skeleton blended spruce longerons with duralumin ribs, skinned in spawn, a birch plywood laminated with resin. The result? An empty weight 20% lighter than all metal rivals. But wood brought risks. Engineers soaked panels in formaldehyde to resist moisture, while pilots joked about flying kindling. Yet Yakovlev's calculations were precise. Every kilogram saved meant a 1.5 boost in climb rate. When prototypes first flew in 1943, test pilots reported agility so sharp it felt like the plane read their thoughts. The gamble paid off in logistics. A Yak-3 required 2,300 fewer machining hours than a Bf-109G. Factories in Siberia, cut off from metal supplies, churned out airframes using furniture workshops and piano glue. By 1944, workers assembled Yak-3s in as few as 9 days, nearly twice as fast as the Bf-109G's 16-day production cycle. But speed came at a cost. The plywood skin couldn't withstand high-G maneuvers, and engine exhaust often charred the tail. Mechanics kept buckets of glue on standby, patching holes between sorties. Before we dig deeper into the Yak-3's wild story, hit that like button and subscribe to Historical Digs. Your support helps us unearth the lost stories of history's most ingenious war machines. Yet this fragility masked a brutal logic. Soviet doctrine prioritized quantity over quality. Lose 3 planes to kill 1 German? Acceptable. But the Yak-3 flipped the math. It stripped down design, no radios, minimal armor, forced pilots to rely on ambush tactics. By 1945, Yakovlev's Flying Splinter had achieved a 3-to-1 kill ratio in low-altitude duels. The lesson was clear. Scarcity, when weaponized, could redefine the impossible. Engineering the unlikely predator. The Yak-3's genius lay in its contradictions. A plane built from wood outran Germany's finest, a lightweight that punched like a heavyweight. To understand how, we have to dissect its DNA. Let's start with the heart, the Klimov VK-105 PF2 engine. A 12-cylinder beast tuned for low-altitude mayhem, it gulped 95-octane fuel to spit out 1,300 horsepower. Engineers tweaked the supercharger to prioritize sea-level performance, knowing Eastern Front dogfights rarely soared above 9,800 feet. The result? A thrust-to-weight ratio that left Bf-109Gs gasping like asthmatic donkeys, as one Luftwaffe mechanic grumbled. Test pilots reported the Yak-3 could surge from 186 to 310 miles per hour in barely a breath, leaving Bf-109Gs struggling in short-range, low-altitude bursts. But raw power meant nothing without control. The wings, spanning just 30 feet, were masterclasses in minimalism. Yakovlev's team tapered the tips to reduce drag and thicken the root for lift, creating a shape that sliced through air like a scythe. Combined with a 24.6-foot fuselage, the Yak-3's roll rate eclipsed even the FW-190s. Test pilots likened it to flicking a dagger. A 360-degree spin took 18 seconds versus the Bf-109G's 22. Armament was a study in precision over brute force. A single 20mm Shavak cannon fired through the propeller hub, paired with twin 12.7mm Berezin UB machine guns. With just 120 cannon rounds and 250 rounds per machine gun, pilots had to make every shot count. The gun's compact placement eliminated convergence issues, creating a shotgun spread of lead at 1,000 feet. Yet the Yak-3's deadliest weapon was its silence. Unlike the screaming inline engines of German fighters, the Klimov's muffled growl let Soviets ambush from cloud cover. Some Luftwaffe pilots dubbed it Der Unsichtbare, the invisible one, and when the kill came, it was intimate. This was no jack-of-all-trades. Above 19,000 feet, the Yak-3's engine wheezed and its thin wings shuddered. But in the dirt and smoke chaos of the Eastern Front, where 80% of kills happen below the clouds, it reigned supreme. A predator, after all, doesn't need endurance, just the speed and power to strike first. The altitude advantage. The Yak-3 didn't just dominate low-altitude combat, it rewrote the rules of engagement. Below 16,000 feet, it was a spectral menace, exploiting a sweet spot where physics and desperation converged. German pilots quickly learned that altitude wasn't just a number, it was a death sentence. The Luftwaffe's Bf-109G, optimized for high-altitude intercepts, carried bulky superchargers and reinforced wings. The Yak-3, by contrast, shed every gram that didn't serve one purpose: owning the sky floor. The secret lay in ruthless prioritization. Yakovlev's team knew the Eastern Front was a gutter fight, a swirling chaos of tank columns, smoke, and strafing runs where 80% of kills happened below cloud level. They tuned the Klimov engine supercharger to prioritize oxygen-rich air at lower altitudes, sacrificing high-altitude prowess for explosive acceleration under 10,000 feet. At 3,200 feet, the Yak-3 could climb at 61.6 feet per second, leaving even the FW-190D, a plane 30% heavier, stalling in its wake. Luftwaffe mechanics cursed the Yak's witch's climb, but the math was irrefutable. Gravity favors the lightweight. German pilots faced an impossible choice: engage the Yak-3 low and its turn radius, a mere 787 feet at 186 miles per hour, allowed it to pivot inside a Bf-109's turning circle like a hawk eviscerating a pigeon. Climb to safety, and the Yak-3's pilots would vanish, knowing their prey would eventually descend to strafe troops or refuel. By 1944, Luftwaffe Command issued Order L-52, avoid sustained dogfights with Yak-3 variants below 16,000 feet, disengage using vertical dives. But this engagement required altitude the Germans often didn't have. The Yak-3's wings exemplify this low-altitude tyranny. Their Naka 230 series airfoil generated less drag but demanded precise engineering. Yakovlev's team accepted a perilous trade-off. Thin wings meant higher stall speeds, but paired with a Yak's featherweight frame, they allowed ludicrous maneuverability. In one engagement near Minsk, a Yak-3 flown by Lieutenant Pavel Grasdanikov outmaneuvered two Bf-109Gs by side-slipping through a barn, a move that ripped the wings off any German plane attempting pursuit. Post-war analysis suggested the Yak-3's minimal metal content reduced radar detectability, though no Luftwaffe reports confirm this. Yet the Yak-3's reign wasn't absolute. Above 19,000 feet, its engine gasped for air, power output dropping by 40%. Pilots joked that climbing above the clouds turned their mounts into flying bricks, but Yakovlev cared little. His design philosophy was brutally geographic. The Eastern Front was not the English Channel. Here, the war was fought in the mud, and the Yak-3 was its perfect instrument, a scalpel honed to slit throats in the shadows. Pilots and tactics. Flying the Yak-3 was a lethal ballet. It demanded instinct, not calculation. Tactics revolved around the Vertushka, a spiraling climb-and-dive maneuver that exploited the fighter's vertical agility. A pilot would lure a Bf-109 into a climb, stall it out, then pivot into a near-vertical dive for a kill shot. German pilots, trained for energy-conserving boom and zoom tactics, found themselves outclassed in crazy spiral dogfights. But the madness was methodical. Yak-3s often operated in pairs, a para, leader, and a Wiedemui, wingman. The leader engaged, drawing enemies into turning fights, while the wingman lurked above, diving to pick off distracted foes. This wolf-pack approach, perfected by the Normandy Neiman Squadron, achieved a confirmed 7-to-1 kill ratio by war's end, with 273 victories against 37 losses. Survivability hinged on audacity. With no armor behind their seats and fuel tanks prone to ignition, Yak-3 pilots embraced a simple creed: the best defense is a dead enemy. Vitaly Klimenko, who scored 30 kills, recalled a duel where he flew through a Bf-109's debris cloud to ambush its wingman. Ground crews played their part too. Mechanics prepped Yak-3s with tactical trim, adjusting control surfaces to prioritize roll rate over stability. Guns were harmonized at 820 feet, turning the fighter into a sniper rifle with wings. And since radios were rare, pilots communicated via hand signals and wing waggles, a silence that made their attacks eerily sudden. But the Yak-3's flaws bred innovation. Lacking high-altitude performance, pilots used cloud cover as movable ambush points. The plane's limits became its liturgy. Pilots knew they couldn't outrun trouble, so they outmaneuvered it. They couldn't absorb hits, so they refused to be hit. In the Yak-3, survival wasn't a function of armor. It was a measure of skill. And on the Eastern Front, skill was the only currency that mattered. Legacy and limitations. The Yak-3 story is one of paradox, a masterpiece forged by constraints, yet shackled by them. By 1945, it had carved a fearsome reputation, but flaws loomed as large as its triumphs. Like Icarus, it soared brilliantly within strict bounds, only to falter beyond them. Post-war, the Yak-3 faced obsolescence with unceremonious haste. Jet engines rendered piston fighters archaic overnight, and the Soviets mothballed thousands of Yak-3s into storage yards. Yet its DNA lingered. The MiG-15, the USSR's first jet ace, borrowed the Yak's philosophy of lightweight agility. The Yak-3's emphasis on power-to-weight ratios and pilot-centric controls became dogma for Cold War engineers, proving that austerity could inspire as much as abundance. But the Yak-3's limitations were hardwired. Its wooden airframe, revolutionary in 1943, degraded rapidly in humid climates. Indonesian pilots flying donated Yak-3s during their 1947 independence struggle found the glue dissolving in tropical rains, wings delaminating mid-flight. Even in temperate zones, the plane's 300-hour airframe lifespan paled next to the Bf-109's 1,000-hour endurance. High-altitude impotence sealed its fate. As Allied bombers ravaged Germany from 26,000 feet, the Yak-3 sat grounded, its Klimov engine starved of oxygen. Soviet attempts to fit turbochargers failed. The airframe couldn't handle added stress. It was a street fighter, useless in a skyscraper war. Yet numbers tell a starker tale. Of 4,848 Yak-3s built, fewer than 50 saw 1946. Most were scrapped, their plywood skeletons fueling bonfires at disbanded air bases. Today, only 11 intact examples survive, displayed in museums from Paris to Vladivostok. Restorers face a cruel irony. The plane's wooden construction, once a wartime lifeline, now complicates preservation. Termites, rot, and souvenir hunters have claimed more Yak-3s than the Luftwaffe ever did. But legacy isn't measured by scrap heaps. The Yak-3 redefined cost-effectiveness, proving that a $15,000 fighter could outduel a $100,000 Messerschmitt. Its minimum viable product ethos echoes in modern drones and stealth tech, where every gram matters. Even its limitations became lessons. The F-35's much-maligned design debates mirror Yakovlev's struggles to balance weight, cost, and performance. But maybe the Yak-3's greatest triumph was psychological. It taught a battered nation that scarcity wasn't shameful. It was a catalyst. It transcended metal, wood, and war to become something immortal. Proof that ingenuity, when cornered, fights hardest. What do you think? Was the Yak-3 a masterpiece of ingenuity or a desperate gamble that got lucky? Let us know your take in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to join us on the next historical dig. Until then, remember, history is full of hidden gems if you know where to dig.